It's my honor to introduce my friend Amy of 46 years, an incredible and experienced PR and writing expert, and someone who is passionate about helping kids tell their stories and helping them through the admissions process. Amy Kossoff-Smith owns Power Hour Editing and uses her journalism and PR experience to help students find and amplify their own unique voices. She has an extensive track record coaching students to get to the heart of the story fast, to stand out in the competitive admissions process. Amy graduated in the top 10% of her class from Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism. Her article on offbeat tactics students use to catch the eye of admissions officer won her first place in the William Randolph Hearst Pulitzers of College Journalism contest. She's been featured on the Today Show, ABC National News, and in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. Amy is also a prior National Wire columnist. Amy has also presented at the College Education and Entertainment Summit and at the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communications Conference. Tonight, we're extremely lucky that Amy will be presenting to our WJ community. Tonight's topic, college essay tips, how to find your wow factor. Amy?
Thank you so much, Leslie. And thanks, WJ, for having me back again. I love being here. This is truly, get the microphone out, you're successful. I love doing this. I love talking to students, and I'm very informal. So, interrupt me if something doesn't make sense, if you want more clarification. We are going to have a Q&A at the end. And like I told these wonderful ladies, I said, my philosophy is I will stay until the last question is answered. So I'll stand up here at the end until everybody has their questions answered. So let's jump in. Okay, show of hands. Are these all seniors in the room? I'd just like to know who I'm talking to. Seniors? Are there any juniors? Couple? Any sophomores? Okay, any freshmen? Okay, all right, great. Well, hopefully everybody will leave with, see a freshman in the back there. Okay. Okay, so here's what you can expect tonight. So I'm going to talk to you about where words matter on the college application. There are several places, and I'm going to kind of show you what to expect there. And we'll be talking a little bit about getting application ready. I've done other presentations at WJ, and I'll be letting you know later if you want to see another sort of piece of this on the CAC website, because I want to cover some additional topics that you may not have seen in the past. Okay, I'm also going to talk about why a timeline is a game changer. I'm a big believer in making a plan, and I'll be giving you some tips on how to do that for yourself. I'll explain what a wow factor is. This is a term I came up with to stand out, and I really believe in it, and I'll explain to you how you can identify yours as well. And then basically learn to write your way to yes. The writing is really important on the college application. Your grades, test scores, your transcript, that's all kind of behind you, but the writing is a huge opportunity in front of you. All right, so let's talk about that. So Leslie introduced my background. I'm a local mom. I've got 3 boys who went through the Churchill school system, and I've been doing this for a long time. It really merges everything I've done in my career, which is journal, and these are the same things, by the way, that they're asking the students to do in the college application. So they're asking you to be a journalist, which is a great storyteller, and a PR expert, knowing how to set yourself apart in a competitive environment. Okay, so moving on. These are, I decided a couple years ago, I wanted to collect all of the logos of all the schools who had ever said yes to my students. And these are many of them. There are some I'm sure that need to be added. But I'm not doing this to brag and say my kid's gonna do a lot of great schools. I'm doing this to show you that there are so many more colleges in the country than the short list that you hear about in the hallway. So definitely open up your hearts and your mind, because there are so many wonderful schools. And I know at school there's a lot of pressure. People are talking about this. Again, it's like a short list of schools. But just even in my practice alone, you can see that people get into a lot of different schools and programs. Okay, so I make the same promise at the beginning of every single presentation. So if you've ever heard me speak before, this may be a repeat. But to every student in the room tonight, I promise you this: you can shine like the brightest star. I promise you that, okay? I have never met a student who couldn't do that. So believe that, and it will happen, I promise you. Okay, so, but how can you do it? How can you create your story for success? Let's talk about the portals for a second. We're not going to focus too much on this. We did something this summer here, but I just want to, for anyone who didn't hear that, there are a bunch of different application portals out there. We're going to focus primarily on the Common App tonight, which is the main portal. It has about 1,000 schools. It's very easy to apply through the Common App. It may seem daunting if you haven't jumped into it, but trust me, it's not that complicated, and there's a lot of online support to figure out things that you may see as complicated, okay? Here are some of the other portals. There's the Coalition for College. It used to be that UMD was only on that, no longer, so no one's really using that one anymore. QuestBridge is a scholarship matching portal where people are able to get massive discounts or full rides. It's a need-based scholarship matching portal. This is the funny one. The Universal College application has 2 schools on it. I emailed them and I said, does it really just have 2 schools? So yes, it's a funny name for 2 schools. Then you have kind of your school-specific portals. The UC portal handles all 9 of the UC schools. Apply Texas, you can apply to all the Texas schools, for example. UCAS, the schools in the UK. So again, there are different portals. It makes it easy to apply to a lot of schools. So we're going to focus primarily on the Common App tonight. These are sort of some facts and figures. Okay, so bottom line, I'm not a big numbers person, I am a big words person, obviously, okay? People are applying to more schools, and there is a higher number of applications per student than ever before. A lot of reasons for that. Basically, pandemic, people couldn't tour schools, things got a little more competitive, so the numbers are up a little bit. Okay. You also want to be aware of the different deadlines for applying to schools. This is a great time for the seniors to make a list of your schools and the deadlines and list your schools by deadline. So these are some of the more popular deadlines. So the first one listed is regular decision. Typically that's by January 1st or so. And what that means is you're put into the regular decision pool, you'll find out at sometime in the spring. The next one is rolling admission. I want to talk about this one for a minute, especially for the seniors in the room. Rolling admission means that you apply as soon as you're polished and ready, and they'll tell you, usually in a few weeks, okay? The one thing I want you to realize though is even though the rolling application deadlines may be May or June, it really means as soon as you're polished in my book, okay? Last year, Pitt, which is one of the very popular rolling school around here, a lot of students thought, well, the deadline is until April or May or whenever it is, I can wait to apply. They had such a burst in the number of applications that they rejected a lot of way overqualified students. So rolling means as early as you're polished. It doesn't mean stress out, it just means get your ducks in a row and go ahead and apply, as early as you can. Because you find out early too, which is great. The next one, early action, I love. Early action is typically somewhere between October 15th and November 1st. And what that means is they're putting you in sort of an earlier pool of applicants, they're telling you earlier, and you're not obligated to go. To me, it's like the best of all worlds, okay? No obligation, but you find out earlier, and you're telling the school, I really want to go there, and you may be increasing your chances a little bit. Then you have early decision. Early decision is a binding application deadline, okay? Typically, deadlines are around November 1st. It could vary here or there. But early decision is binding. The only way out of an early decision letter that you get would be saying, claiming that you can't afford it. And unfortunately, the financial aid packages lag. So we don't find out financial aid packages until later, and that's a little bit of a problem. So early decision is only for students who say, I've identified one school that this is my happy place, I want to go there, there's nowhere else I could be as happy, or I want to reach a little bit and I know that that will increase my chances. But think seriously about that. And the last one is restrictive early action. There's a handful of very elite competitive Ivy League schools. You can apply to only one, and then they restrict you from the other kinds of schools you can apply to. So the bottom line is read the directions. If there's any confusion, call the admissions office directly to find out. Okay? So what's the deal with these app portals that I mentioned earlier? So you can apply to multiple schools all at once. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Once you get your activity list and your main essay and the school-specific questions, you can apply. However, don't just copy and paste. Even though they're saying, you can enter your information and flow through, each school has specific additional questions they'll ask. The supplements, even though they may sound identical, some are a little bit different. And unfortunately, there are sometimes discrepancies between the college website and the Common App. So you really have to play sleuth and kind of be a little bit of a detective to get to the bottom line. And then the last tip, proofread everything. The Common App allows you to hit the preview button in the upper right corner of most of the screens. I always tell my students that's your best friend in the application because that's where you see exactly what the school will see, okay? Okay, so how can you get Common App ready if you're getting ready to apply this year or even next year? You might think about these items. So you get to list a list of activities, up to 10. Don't stress if you have fewer, don't worry if you have more. You can combine, there are other ways to communicate more than 10 activities. You don't want to communicate 50 activities though. You don't want to get the impression that you joined 20 clubs just to get the free pizza at lunch or put something on your college application. They really are looking for deep dives here. And on the activity section, you also report the hours per week and the weeks per year, so they are auditing you a little bit in terms of what you actually did. You can also list up to 5 academic honors on the application. You'll want to get a copy of your unofficial transcript because some schools, including I think UMD, do require you to enter your transcript. Test scores and dates if that applies, personal and family information, teacher recs, and then what you want to major by school. That's a great thing, especially for the 9th, 10th, and 11th graders in the room. As you're building your college list, think about what you might want to major in at each school because you are asked that on the application. And then again, write a timeline that works for you. Timelines are really important. Okay. Okay. So why does a timeline matter? Why do I keep mentioning a timeline? So it's almost, you see this visual on the left side of the screen. It's almost like playing whack-a-mole at the beach. Has anyone played that game where you go to the beach and you're like hitting the moles, right, as each one comes up? College applications are a lot like that too. There are a lot of moving parts and you're trying to juggle it with school and activities and life. Okay, it'll keep you on track, it'll keep your parents informed, and I believe that creativity doesn't happen when you're rushing. I believe that creativity happens when you give it a little bit of time. So you want to avoid, obviously, the last minute crunch. If you see a deadline, for example, that is November 1st, I like to tell my students, try to think of 48 to 72 hours or more in advance of the deadline as your deadline. Because a lot of times we see what we call lane congestion at the end of the process. I saw it myself. I was touring schools with one of my older sons. We were, he had delayed and it was October 31st and we were in a hotel room and we were like cursing at the computer and really frustrated. But what happens is there's this huge influx of applications and the system has crashed in the past. Sometimes the schools are wonderful and understanding and say take another couple days, and sometimes they say deadlines are deadlines and they play hardball. So try to apply early. So why do words matter in a competitive situation like college admissions? These are all the different parts of your application where you'll be asked to write something, where words will come forth from you to explain what you've done. So you've got your activity list, your main essay, supplements, the application itself. There's also what they call a COVID question. We're sort of starting to call it the community disruption question. It's COVID happened, were you impacted? Not a big deal. If you had a major serious impact, I recommend you use it. Otherwise, only 16% of the students answered it last year, and it's becoming less and less important in the application. But again, if it applies to you in a good or bad way, use it. There's also an additional information section. That's where students explain things like, I say an errant grade, one grade that doesn't really reflect their ability. Or a lot of my seniors now are talking about a little bit of a loss of foundational learning in the 9th grade year when it was remote learning and schools weren't meeting every day. So again, if there's something to explain, explain it. I meet with admissions officers a lot to gain intel, and I think it was, I don't want to say which one, but one of the admissions officers said, if there's a red flag or something I need to know about, please tell your students, let me know before I have to ask. All right, so grades go up, grades go down. Just you be the one to sort of control your narrative here. And then test scores. I crossed that out because you're applying at the best time in history if you don't like to take tests. Because there are many, standardized tests, there are so many test optional schools, so, and believe me, people are getting into many, many schools without test scores. There are certainly some that are still requiring it, so I'm sort of trying to navigate these courts. Some schools still require it, and some are state mandates, not necessarily the school's choice, but there's something called fairtest.org, which historically has been where they list all the test optional schools, and that's a great source if you want to look there or at the school website. Some of the schools will ask you to write some additional statements if you're applying test optional, just depends. So I crossed out test scores. If you think about your college application like the graphic you see on the left as this puzzle of you want all the puzzle pieces to kind of fit together logically. If you drop the test scores out of the application, everything else bubbles up into importance. The average application is read in about 10 to 12 minutes. So if you think about all the pieces they have to review in a very short period of time, you want to make sure that your application flows, makes sense, is logical, again, no red flags. Okay, so how can you communicate your wow factor? This is something I came up with several years ago. A wow factor is something that you and only you can say. Everybody has it. Again, I promise you that. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit, and sometimes you have to think about it, but it's worth it. It really is, because if you're communicating things that only you can say, you're giving yourself a great shot in the college admissions process. Okay, so let's talk a little more about that. I want to mention activities briefly because I feel really, really strongly about the activity list. So again, you have 8 to 10 activities to report. You have 10 spots on the Common App. For the UC schools, they do give you a little more space to expand upon them, but just focusing on the Common App, I don't want any students to stress if they have fewer or more. I've seen people get into college with all kinds of numbers, but there are other things you can do to add to your activity list. It doesn't just have to be captain of a team or club or whatever, it doesn't have to be something big. It can be a hobby. It's how you spend your time outside of school. Also, what I call beyond the transcript things like band or orchestra or photography or ceramics, things where, classes where things happen beyond the classroom that you can explain. Sometimes we can get that there as well. So again, wow factor. Try to set yourself apart. A lot of times I'm approached for appeals to UMD after the application closed, and sometimes people don't get the answer they want, and some of my private coaching students will send me friends saying, my friend didn't get to UMD, can you help them? And time again, I see an activity list where I feel like they really just didn't take advantage of that space. So really make that work for you. These are my do's and don'ts. I'm not going to spend time on this because I do an entire hour just on this with WJ, and it is on the CAC website. And so you can find it there. If you sign up for my follow-up materials, I'll include a link. But I'm not going to go through all these tonight because I wanted to kind of give you guys bonus material, all right? But I want to just mention a couple here, some of my favorites, let's say. So the don'ts at the very bottom. Don't resume repeat. What does that mean? Don't regurgitate your activity list. A lot of times students say to me, and by the way, there's a copy of this handout out there too if you want it. A lot of times students will say, I'm really nervous that the colleges aren't going to know what I did. Trust the activity list. I just convinced you why the activity list is so important. So knowing that yours is going to work hard for you, use the essay to tell the bigger story of you. Okay? Okay, next thing here. Things you do want to do. The very bottom of this, be authentic. If I had 100 admissions officers in this auditorium and I asked them all the same question, what do you want from students? What do you want from students? And I've asked this again and again and again, I feel like it all boils down to that. Be authentic. They tell me we want to hear a teenage voice. We're not looking for a parent's essay. We're not looking for this over-polished, just speaking from a soapbox, looking down at someone. They're really looking for you. They want to hear what you have to say. And they're very trained at reading it. So I would caution you against having parents or other people write for you. If you have someone coaching you, whether it's an English teacher or me or somebody, whatever, just make sure that your voice is coming through. That is the number one most important thing. Because again, they're looking at it like that puzzle I showed you earlier. So if something doesn't quite make sense, it's going to raise a red flag for you. I had an admissions officer once say to me, for example, I had a student applying for biomedical engineering, but I didn't see anything in the activities. I didn't see anything in the classes the student selected, and there was nothing in the writing that indicated they wanted this path. So again, they're looking for it to make sense. They're looking for you to make sense for them. Okay. This gets its own slide now. Okay, I want to redo my do's and don'ts. Artificial intelligence. Please resist the urge, if there even is an urge, and I'm going to explain why. It's dangerous in college admissions, I can guarantee you. I have been studying this so much because obviously, I'm an essay editor, I want people to write essays. However, I also want the best for my students. So I participated in a session with the CEO of the Common App and a professor from the University of Pennsylvania. I heard a lot of things that night. They said things like colleges are looking for human stories. Machines can't pump out human stories. A machine can't know that you were at the beach when you were 2, stubbed your toe on a shell, and you've been interested in marine biology ever since, right? Like, a machine can't know your personal stories. And the other thing is, if you're trusting a machine to regurgitate your essay, who's to say it might not show up somewhere else? I don't know. The same professor I mentioned, by the way, from the University of Pennsylvania, asked for volunteers that night. He said, can I have college counselors who are willing to read 100 excerpts of essays? And I jumped at the opportunity. I said, I'm in. This was pre-season, luckily. I had a little more time to volunteer my time then, right? But we were reading these essays. They were excerpts, but we were supposed to be telling them in this survey he was doing what character traits are coming across in this essay. So it was fascinating to me. But what I heard was that colleges are way ahead of us. They're detecting it. And the Common App added a 3rd box, basically having students say, this is my own work. So just resist the urge. It's a bad idea. Okay. What are colleges really looking for? Everybody wants to know, what's the key? How can I get in? How can I see behind the curtain to know really what's going on? So again, I want to boil it down and give you the biggest points here so that I can plant them like a bug in your ear. Colleges tell us they're looking for character in the essays. They're looking for character in the applications. So when I say this, sometimes I've had students come to me and say, is my character coming across? And they'll say, like, I've got great character in this. And I said, no, not like that. Character is how you respond to people, situations, challenges. Character is how you show what you do. The other line I love, they said, we're looking for a good roommate. Okay, so would you make a good roommate? So would you want to say in a college essay, for example, I could never live with anyone else. I like my own space. I'm very organized and OCD. I've got everything in containers, and if anybody touches my stuff, I would start screaming for 5 hours. That's a red flag, right? Who wants you as a roommate? You can't always get a single room on college campuses. Okay, and then the other thing is, I love this one. Tulane said at a college admissions informational session, they said, tell the story that only you can tell. Okay? You're not teaching them a general lesson, you're teaching them a you lesson. So kind of think about that a little bit as you're doing your writing as well. These are the prompts for the class of 2024. So current seniors, these are your prompts for the main essay. A couple things about this. You have up to 650 words to write the essay. Every word counts, a title counts. You don't have to have a title, by the way. You can if you want. My philosophy on that is if it adds to your story, go for it. If it doesn't, don't worry about a title. Dashes count as words in the Common App. So, just keep in mind as you move forward. You want to maybe be at 6:45, just so when you go to enter that night, you're not in a panic. But these are the questions, and I put in yellow just kind of the key part of each question. But these are just prompts. This is a little bit, this is a lot different than English class, okay? So I know in English class, in MCPS, you're given these rubrics and do this, don't do that, and it's like this checklist, and everybody wants to make sure they get every piece in. College essay prompts are not that. These are just prompts. They're to kind of generate an idea from you. Because if you notice the last one, you can do something free choice. That's my least favorite prompt, I'll be honest. The reason is, it also says something you've already written, and I feel like I've never met an essay that couldn't fit into one of these prompts. They're pretty broad-based. Again, up to 650 words, and you're only writing one essay. Sometimes people say, do I have to write all these? No, one essay, okay? So let's say, far from my Bluetooth here, let's see. Let's say we sort of, and by the way, those prompts have stayed the same for years. There have been a few changes here and there, but for the past, for many, many years, the questions haven't changed that much. They usually finalize and confirm them in February or March each year for the younger students in the room. So what's the Amy essay prompt? What are they really asking you? They're basically saying, tell me a story about you. What makes you unique? What makes you tick? How will you shine on my campus? Okay? So that's kind of the bottom line. In addition to the main essay, you're sometimes, but not always, asked to write what we call supplements. These are additional questions that each school will ask of you. I'm going to show you the low end to the medium end of supplements. These are just some examples for this. These are for seniors. And again, these also are supplements that have not changed since last year, or even the year before. At the very low end of the supplement, category or whatever is 0 supplements. So schools like Pitt, no supplements, unless you're applying for honors, I think. I have to double check. Many schools have no supplements. I think Michigan State has none. I think Ohio State has none. If you're applying for honors or scholars programs, sometimes you're asked to write something extra. But for the general admission, there are many, many schools out there that have no supplements. UMD is what I would consider to be, well, I used to consider it kind of on the lower end of like requirements, because what you see at the top, those are complete the sentence, and only your answer counts. It used to be only 150 characters, so it was literally like a line or two. Then last year it was, I think, 350. This year they doubled it to 650 characters. It's basically a paragraph. It's a very short answer, and I encourage people to have fun with these, not to take them too seriously. They're really trying to get to know you, all right? So in addition to these 5 things you see at the top, the changes have been, again, the number of characters. My favorite thing about last Thursday, last year was last Wednesday, I think, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Just pick something you did on a day and talk about it, and expand it a bit. Last year, one of the short answer questions was, diversity means to me, ... This year, they spelled it out at the bottom. You can see that at the bottom. It's a long, long prompt. It's the same thing, diversity means to me, basically, with a little bit of a twist. That's also, I like showing this one because that's the #1 trend we're seeing in supplements this year and last year a little bit. The Supreme Court denied colleges' ability to use race in college admissions. You may have heard that. As a result, colleges are basically saying, we want to hear about diversity. We value diversity on our campus, and so they're adding it themselves, many of them. Okay. This is kind of on the medium end. The high end, I'm not showing. The high end is like the Ivies. There could be 5, 10 essays and complete the sentence and all kinds of stuff. But this is kind of the average, like the middle for most schools. This is University of Michigan. They've asked the same questions every year for many, many years. The first one is, what community are you a part of? Think outside the box on this one, okay? The second one is probably the #1 most popular common supplement that we see. It's why Michigan? Why do you want to go here? This is my favorite kind of essay because it's your opportunity to really sell yourself and show that you did your research. And I put at the bottom plus Ross Extra, meaning if you're applying to the Ross School of Business, there are extra supplements. So I'm just trying to kind of plant these ideas in your mind so that you know that you really do have to be a little bit of a detective to look around and find all the different requirements for each school as you go through it. Okay. Again, I like to share sort of inside tips straight from the source. So these are some tips that I came up with, or not came up with, I'm sorry, that I gathered. The first one is from I love hearing from students, so this is University of Chicago students. Set deadlines ahead of your actual college application deadlines. Just what I said before, right, about making a plan, very important. Get your essays done ahead of time and have some wiggle room to edit. And make sure you take care of yourself throughout the process. I believe that. It's very difficult to be creative if you're completely strung out. So again, add time, take time. UMass Amherst, you're required to select an intended major. I like to mention that because people sometimes get into the Common App and they're shocked that all of a sudden they have to mention a major. Are you locked into that major for the next 4 years? Sometimes yes, usually no. But again, that's a school by school thing, so you want to look into that. Don't try to play the major game, by the way. Sometimes people say to me, I heard it's easier to get into the school if I apply for this major. I really feel strongly against that, okay? Not to say that I wouldn't want everybody to get into every single school, but it is impossible to see behind the curtain. If you have heard, for example, that it's really easy to get into this school as a history major, what if they lost 5 history professors last year for reasons we have no idea about? What if what if more history majors said yes last year than they expected? So they're a little bit over-enrolled. They're gonna pull back this year. So you want to apply for what makes sense for you. That's how you're going to do best. And the last one, College of Charleston. This is sort of funny, sort of not. Someone uploaded a screenshot of their breakup text with their boyfriend. Please be sure to double check. It's really not funny. I share that tip because it's mortifying. If the student had used the preview button, they would have seen that this was a major snafu, right? So again, use the preview button so you're seeing what the college is seeing. Okay. So what can you do now if you're a senior? Even if you're a junior, create a timeline. If you sign up for my follow-up materials, I will send you my free essay planner. I put together a report that talks about how to do your plan. It's also on my website if you want to look at that. That's powerhourediting.com. Again, tackle rolling admissions and early action first. and then move on to the others. Very important that you work in order of deadline. And also think about research. Research colleges, you know, so many things are school by school. Merit aid sometimes is given automatically based on your profile. Sometimes you have to ask for it. You can write your activity list in your main essay and your supplements by deadline. These are all if you're a senior. If you're a junior or a sophomore or a freshman, maybe make a note stock on your computer and start, as you hear about colleges, start thinking about what's your why? How might you fit in there? That's the best way to really inform a college list. But do not stress. My goal is to have every single student, whether I'm working with them or not, to have as much fuel in the tank as possible to get all the way to the finish line. If you're completely strung out on day 2, you'll never get to the finish line. Okay, so I promise you, try to start early, take a deep breath, do what you can do. That's how you'll succeed. Okay, I also want you to think about your college application process as a marathon, not a sprint. It is a process, it takes time, and it's important to think about just kind of knocking it out slowly if you can. Okay, so I like to also close. We're gonna get to Q&A in a second, and I'm so sorry, it's so cold in this room, I know, everybody's freezing. Reading great writing inspires great writing. So I know that you guys are reading so much in school, and you probably get home and the last thing you want to do is read. My own kids have said to me, why aren't you reading more books when you're busy working? And I said, I read the best stories all day long, trust me. I'm reading plenty. At night I like to just sit down with TV. But before you sit down to write your main essay, think about reading a couple of creative essays, because I do think it gets your brain kind of churning in a creative way. Okay. Oops. It's funny, I think I can on this side. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to close before we get to the Q&A with the same promise I made in the beginning. You can shine like the brightest star. I promise you that. You just need to kind of put one foot in front of the other and get it done. So let's go ahead and take questions. This is the link. If you want to get some follow-up, I'll send out a few additional resources if anybody would like. But thank you for having me. I'd love to take any and all questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We got some student volunteers. Nikki? Okay, and Nikki and Tom are going to walk around, so just raise your hand if you have questions, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have.
On one of your essay don'ts, I just want to clarify what $5 words are.
That's probably the most popular question people ask me. $5 words are, don't use big words just to impress the admissions people. If it's authentic to how you speak, how you write, go for it. The example I like to share, I had a student once who described something that sounded like an epiphany. Okay, so I said, ooh, that sounds like such an epiphany, such an aha moment. So the student wrote the word down, but the way he spelled it, I could tell it was not a word he was familiar with. So I said, do you have any idea what it means? And he said, Amy, I don't know. So I deleted it and I said, I tell you what, look it up, use it in a couple of sentences. You can if you know what it is, but using a word that you don't even know what it means is dangerous because you could use it, out of context. So yeah, that's the most popular question I get from that. And I just realized I didn't read essay examples to you guys. Would that be helpful if I read a few examples, or do you want to do Q&A? Okay, let me read that. That's actually usually my favorite part. I don't know why I forgot about that. So before I read these, I want to say, I promise confidentiality to every single student I work with. I don't talk about where people are applying, what they're writing about. I feel very, very strongly about that. At the very end of the process, I send a survey out, and in that survey, I ask some questions. I ask my students to give tips to next year's students, and at that point, and only at that point, I say, would you like to share your writing to inspire other students? So I will only share examples where students are comfortable with that, okay? So I'm not going to read the other sort of caveat before I read the examples. I'm not going to read the entire essay, or we'd be here all night, but I'm going to read you a few excerpts to kind of get your mind thinking about some creative ideas, okay? So you're not going to get the full context. One time a parent said to me, I didn't really get the full context. I'm not trying to give you full context, I'm just trying to spark some creativity. Okay, so let me read you a few examples. I've tried lots of sneakers over the years, Adidas, Converse, Vans, but one pair was the holy grail of sneaks. My love, my pride and joy, my white Air Force Ones. Platform leather low-top sneakers with a signature Nike swoosh on each side. They're basic but dependable, and I'm definitely obsessed with these shoes. Anywhere I go, any outfit I wear, casual or dressy, my Air Force Ones are a staple in my daily wardrobe, a safe choice. I even wore them to dance at my cousin's wedding. At first they were new, white, and exciting. Now they're a lot more to me. Let's be honest, white sneakers aren't the smartest thing for a teenager. On a typical day, I'm rushing from school to mock trial to friendship circle. So there's no way they'll stay clean, but that doesn't faze me. Thanks to my 1 a.m. Google search, I developed a strict cleaning protocol. So she talks about some other things and how her shoes weren't the only things that she had to polish over time. So she talks about some challenges she faced. And at the very end, I love this line. She said, just like each sitting president, I fly high in my Air Force Ones and will be transported to a new zip code next fall. Air Force Ones, bright and ready for action. I thought that was very... Here's another one. Flying cars, robots, paper video games, songs, and a washing machine. Creations like these filled my inventor's book. I got this notebook in first grade, decorated it with NASA and heart stickers, and packed it with sketches from my imagination. If I thought of something, I brought it to life, later building a balance scale from a soda bottle and butter containers and a projector from a shoebox and magnifying glass. Science is basically in my DNA. She goes on and on. Oh, and then she says how science hasn't always returned my affection, and talks about sort of dealing with a health issue where science couldn't bring all the answers, and it was really a great essay. Here's another. I always say this is one of my favorite ones because I think every essay is one of my favorite ones, but I thought this one was also really creative. So I had a student come to me once who said, Amy, I love my truck and I love country music. So I said, that's your essay then. Okay, you've got to write about these two things. Could you take a country song, dissect it, drop a line at the beginning of each paragraph, and tell me about your truck? So that's what he did. So each paragraph began with a line from this country song. And then he tells us about his truck. So he remembers being a little boy and his dad kind of hoisting him up into this big truck that felt larger than life, and they would drive all the way to the dump just to take the trash out, just so they could spend time together as father and son. He remembers going for his first date and being in the back seat and kind of his hands sweating, trying to hold a girl's hand like behind his dad and being really embarrassed. And then he talks about having an injury in high school and couldn't play sports anymore and got really, really down about it. So he comes home from school one day and his dad tosses him the keys and says, she's yours now. So he took it in the garage and tinkered with it and learned all about fixing cars. And it was just a great essay. To me, it read like a country song. So I love sharing that one too. A couple more questions. Okay, here's one. So sometimes we hear about, you'll hear in the other video if you watch it, sometimes people say, are there things you shouldn't write about in essays? I believe there's no shouldn'ts or can'ts, okay? I don't believe in that. However, there are some topics that are very popular in the teenage world that you want to be cautious about because they're so popular. So sports is one. We have 8 million high school athletes. So if every single college essay is the same old, Friday Night Lights and running the bases and, spiking the ball or whatever it is, like it gets a little boring, right? But if you have something unique to say about your sport, you absolutely can write about sports. And I've seen it done many, many times. This was a football player who wrote about, his essay was called 68 and Breezy. That's an example where the title worked for the essay. Eager and full of anticipation, I feel 1,000 sets of eyes staring at me from the stands. I turn to the huddle, he talks about being the captain and helping the team, and then he basically talks about how 68 and Breezy is the perfect cool internal temperature. It might be colder than that here tonight. What do you guys think? 67 tonight. So anyway, he talks about how he brings this cool internal temperature, not just to the football field, but everywhere in his life. As a student leader, with his siblings, like he goes on and on about how cool, cool and calm really serves him well. Okay, let me just pick one more. Here's one. Okay. So this was a student who loved sales. Sell me this pen, dared Leonardo DiCaprio. Countless people tried to sell him the pen in The Wolf of Wall Street. Didn't even see The Wolf of Wall Street, that movie? Somebody? Yeah, okay. But no one could do it. If I had been in that movie, I would have sold Leo the pen and made him order 3 more. So the student talks about, selling and how much he learned about selling. He says, I'm a natural at sales. I use emotion, logic, and word choice to my advantage to give each person a unique and effective sales pitch. However, as I ventured into the fundraising and sales world, I ran into an obstacle. I always tried to run a one-man show, and for most situations, as I would eventually find out, that was less profitable than working in teams. I had my first brush with my flaw at a young age. I was 12 and it was snow shoveling season. As I went from house to house, alone as usual, to maximize my profits, I noticed more and more people were denying my services. Aren't you a little old for this? I think I'll do it myself. I was perplexed until I had a golden idea. If I brought my younger brothers with me, we'd be more cute and younger looking group. I weighed the pros and cons of splitting the cut and having to teach them the best strategies for shoveling, but I decided it was worth a shot. When I brought them along, even though my cut of the sales decreased, our quantity of jobs increased by even more, driving up our total revenue, and my brother's fun and satisfaction. It was a win-win, and although I was young, I began to understand the value of working in teams. So he talks about that over time and such. So anyway, those are the examples. I love reading those. I call them rock star essays. I feel like every essay has the potential to be a rock star essay. If you sort of just write about you, use some creativity, and some thoughtfulness. Anyway, questions. Sorry about that. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of those employee metaphors, like
Why don't you talk on the mic just so everybody can hear them on the recording? Yeah.
it seemed like a lot of those employed metaphors, maybe half of them, the shoes, they're kind of a metaphor for growth and learning. The truck as a metaphor. It feels like if you use a metaphor, a lot of the words are going to be about your metaphor, about this other thing that describes you indirectly. Is that giving up the direct association or information about you for creating a metaphor that is more personal and probably more about your ability to describe or evoke emotion? Is that a worthwhile trade-off?
Okay, great question. And again, I'm only reading a handful, so it's hard to give the full context. I absolutely think every college essay should be so personal, the story only you could tell. So in these cases, the students, yes, they were using some creativity because you are trying to stand out from a lot of different people, so you don't want it to be a rote English essay that's very robotic. But I think that if you can, I do believe in some creative mechanism, if you will. I'm trying to think of other, but I mean, it could be, and a college essay could be anything. It's like the wild, wild west in a way. There's no rubric like an MCPS. So I've seen everything, and I guess those are some of my favorites because they're so relatable. But every college essay has some magic to it because it's so much about that student. Sometimes students will launch with a story from when they were younger that's very indicative of their life over time. That's another approach I've seen a lot. But I don't believe in any cookie cutter essays. I think each one is unique. So sorry if I gave that impression. I don't believe that everyone needs a metaphor. Yeah, it certainly should be all about you. I like to say to my students, you're teaching a you lesson, not a general lesson. So we don't want push language that's like explaining how to do something. That's Wikipedia, that's an English paper. A college essay is a you paper, so it really needs to be as personal about you in as creative a way as possible. Good question, thank you. Did I answer it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? Sorry. Everyone's frozen. Yes.
So you spoke a moment ago about the 5 L words, which were like big words. What if your kids fix the big words and how do you kind of tone them down or connect to the emotional side of the story?
Okay, great question. So in other words, and I want it to be authentic. I mean, if your student is one who uses big words, that's going to be reflected in the transcript too, right? This is a student who's probably taken a lot of advanced courses. It's part of their story. You don't want to talk so like this that, you don't know who your reader is. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but you don't want to talk sort of like down to somebody. I had a student once who was looking to major in philosophy, and I'll admit, like, I kept getting out the dictionary to look up many of the words, and I finally said, listen, I consider myself pretty well versed, but I'm having a really tough time getting through this. I can't relate to it. So I do think that you're trying to pull the reader's heart through the screen a little bit. So you do want to include some either vulnerability, personal, something that makes them feel something for you, good or bad. You don't want your essay to be this sort of like chest pounding, like I did this, I did that, I was a captain, I'm a leader, I'm great. Like we all have good and bad in our lives, right? So it is important that it reflects you and it's also approachable. Tough balance to strike, but that's sort of where I net out on that.
Should we talk more about our difficulties or the things that make us special, but in a negative way, like the things that we're not so good at, as equal than the things that we're good at, or because if we do we need to do more of talk more in our essays about positive things about us than negative things, or should we the same?
Okay. Good question, really good question. Thanks for asking that. I think it depends. I don't think that a college essay should be all gloom and doom. I've read some where I've said to the student, look, I'm so sorry you went through this, but it's really reading like a medical report. I feel like I'm in triage at Suburban Hospital. You know what I mean? Like, they're not looking for that. They're not looking for all the gloom and doom. If you're going to write what I call a challenge story, which is sort of what you're referring to, which is a popular essay topic, a lot of students do like to write about that. What I like to say is think about your word real estate, meaning set up the challenge up front and then hopefully bring in a bit of what the triumph was and what you learned from it. I don't think any college essay should be all bad news, and I don't think it should be necessarily all sunshine and rainbows, but I think it should be an authentic story to who you are and what you've been through. So, and I also don't think a college essay should be, I've read some beautiful essays, I mean, and today is no exception, and I hate telling someone who wrote something gorgeous to cut it, but sometimes I'll read something and I'll be honest and I'll say, listen, the writing is stellar, I mean, I want to learn more, but the whole college essay can't be about kindergarten. You know, like, it's terrible what happened in kindergarten, right, to all of us. I mean, trust me, I got some stories I could share. But you know, that's not, the college is looking for you over time a bit more. So if you're going to talk about young you, make sure that it's brief and it supports your point and you are showing the evolution of you. So balance, basically. It's all about some balance in the essay. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. What other questions do you guys have?
Hi, so I'm kind of thinking of going to an art college, so I kind of wanted to know if I'm going to an art college, I should use art in my essay, or should I pick something else that also could technically relate to art in a way?
Okay, so that's another it depends kind of thing. So art, when you're applying for art programs, typically you also have to present a portfolio, sometimes even a video, obviously. So and by the way, I just did a supplement document for a student applying to like a fine arts kind of a path, and it was unbelievable how every single school had such different requirements and interviews, no interviews. I mean, it's like they should just standardize it, right? So the answer is maybe. What you want to do is you want to look at everything they're asking of you. Many times for the art schools, they will ask you some kind of an arts question. But other times they don't. So sometimes if you're showing a portfolio and they know you're very artistic, maybe you use the main essay to tell something else about you, another piece of your story. So it really depends. You want to look at the whole picture, everything they're going to see, because they're going to see you as a jigsaw puzzle. Related to that, it's a great question, by the way, you made me think of one other thing. A lot of times people think in the main essay they have to sort of defend their major and talk about why they want to study what they want to study. Many schools will say, why do you want to come here? Why do you want to study this? You do have other opportunities to answer it. Graduate school applications are a totally different story, and with graduate school students, what I say to them is you're answering 3 questions, and I'll be honest, it's not that different from the college admissions why statement, and I'm going to tell you guys. It's this: why you, why now, why here? It's so simple. If you can answer those 3 questions, you can get into any program, including art school. So good luck. That sounds great. But I mean, again, if that's your story and you've got something incredible to say about it, go for it. I don't know what your full story is, but you know, if you feel like you've got something amazing to say, or maybe hypothetically you hated art as a little kid and you would leave the room when they were teaching art and now you love it. Who knows? Maybe there's a contrast story there. You know, I've seen that kind of thing too, where kids have evolved over time and how much they love or hate something. So. Yeah.
This is going to be our last question,
Yeah.
just because we're getting to about 8 o'clock.
And then I'll just stay here if anyone wants to. Yeah.
Thank you for this great information.
Sure.
In terms of the resume that I guess you built through the Common App process, if someone, that they feel like it's kind of light, you know what I mean, or whatever, are there anything that you suggest to the student that they consider that they could, you know, somehow add to the resume that they might not have thought of because it doesn't fall in the typical like activity or job, things like that? Just looking for suggestions on how to supplement, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Hobbies, things you do outside of school. Sometimes someone will give me their activity list and all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, I taught myself how to play this instrument or whatever, you know. Even going to the gym, I've used Fitness Enthusiast, you know, work out 3 times a week, wrote my own schedule. The other thing I love to use, and my kids went through the MCPS schools, but I work with kids all over the country, and I will tell you, mandating service hours is not a universal thing in our country. So because you each have to graduate with at least 75, a lot of times I'll say, well, how many service hours do you have? And they'll be like, only 75. I'm like, that's amazing. You gave 75 hours to your community. So I like to make that an item. You know, community service, active volunteer, and then just boom, 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 list a few places that you volunteered. Yeah, basically how you spend your free time, even if you're an avid reader or you like to bake, anything you do is fair game. That's a great question. Thanks for asking me. All right, so I'm going to stay up here, and if anybody has other questions, I'm happy to hang around for a few minutes. If I'm frozen in one place, you'll just have to like knock me to the other side.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was beyond helpful to a lot of us, me included, because I have a senior. So I just do want to remind everybody to take the sheet outside with the survey on it, and please answer those survey questions and let us know how incredible this was, because we want Amy to come back every year. Thanks for coming tonight. All right, good night.